Hey guys, Technicosm here, and today I've got a video that I'm going to target a little bit more towards people who might be new to the channel and haven't seen this stuff before, so probably going to be a bit more beginner friendly this video, because this is something that I think that is very overwhelming when you first open FL Studio, and it's something that I really wanted to clear up, because I think might have mentioned it in passing in some of my videos before, but I think it's something that really deserves a whole video, and that is that when you click the add button to go add a sound in a generator in FL Studio, just something that will make some sound, and you see all these options. A couple of these aren't from FL Studio. A couple of things, them are things I've put in, but for the most part, these are all FL Studio. It's kind of like, whoa, oh god, I've got to learn so more. And there's a more plugins thing over here. What the? Well, first of all, let me just explain that more plugins thing is if you want to add something that isn't in FL Studio to FL Studio. So don't worry about that. And secondly, the main thing that I want to prove in this video is that the chances are you are hardly going to use any of these. There are going to be a select few in which you'll feel very comfortable using, and you'll be able to make almost any sound you could ever want with. Because of that, yeah, a lot of this list is not that useful. So not only am I going to go through this list to prove that point, but also because I think for the most part, this will save you a lot of time because you won't have to use these synths now. You won't have to bother trying to learn every single one of them only to realise they're not even good and all that. But at the same time, the one consequence of that would be that you would miss out on a lot of knowledge. Even if a lot of these are ones that you'd never use, you would at least learn something from trying to figure out how they work and all that. And I want to try and also help with that, because I will explain how all of these work, and for the most part I know how everything on here works. Now, there isn't like a... I'm not going to say it's 100%, there are a couple that I literally never use, where I've looked through the manual and I've tried to understand it the best I can, and I still could have a bit of I could be a bit off with it, but yeah. Now I also just want to say, in case it wasn't already clear enough, this is a completely unscripted video, but I suppose that would probably also be pretty good, because I think that way you can know that I'm, being genuine, and I think that might actually improve things. Just a quick note, there will be no editing in this video, I'm afraid. It's just because right now the laptop that I am doing this on is absolutely terrible and it can't handle any video editors. I'm very hoping to get a new computer soon, and I'll start taking YouTube a whole lot more seriously once I can do that and actually open a decent video editor and not have my laptop blue screen. So yeah, once I can do that, yeah. Anyway, so let's start from the top with 3xOsc-Oscillator, or triple oscillator, or whatever you want to say. I will admit, this is the one thing I will give FL Studio credit for. They put the easiest synth at the top. And I know this is in alphabetical order, but at least they did that. But oh wait, they didn't even do that, because the chances are that you're looking at this and thinking, hang on, that's not what mine looks like. Mine looks like this. So yeah, they didn't necessarily put that at the top. So yeah, they kind of even messed that up a little bit. I love FL Studio, but like, this is not very beginner friendly at all. I suppose it doesn't have to be. But yeah, in fact, I don't even know where 3xOsc-Oscillator is gone. I can't find it. Oh, it's there. Synth Classic, that makes sense. So yeah, you can have these menus being category mode, tree mode. I actually don't know what that is. Oh, like that, right, okay, now that makes sense. Or simple mode. And although, in theory, having them in tree or category would make a lot more sense, I must admit, tree does look a little bit decent. I personally find that usually, unless I would use tree if your list of synthesizers gets really big, but for the most part, I find it just more confusing having to look through folders to get to my synths. I'd rather just click once and then click again and then have my synth. So I usually keep it in simple. I still know relatively where everything is because it's all in alphabetical order, so I know that all the S stuff is over here, all the A stuff is over here, obviously, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's open this up. So this is what is called a subtractive synthesizer, as far as I'm aware. There are different kind of types of synthesizers, and technically there's more than the ones I'm going to talk about today, but I'm pretty sure, at least as far as I know, all the other ones are very, very similar to these major ones I'm going to talk about today. And like, if you wanted to really get down to semantics, I think technically there aren't really any synthesizers that don't fall into one of these categories if you really want to get down to things, but staying on topic for now, this is a subtractive synthesizer. What that means is it already has the data in it for a certain amount of sounds. In this case, it is 3 different waves. So what I'm going to do is, this knob right here, sorry, not that knob, this knob, controls how much we mix in the first, second and third oscillator. The first one doesn't have one because by default the first one is a maximum mix, like it's there. But when you open it up, the second oscillator and the third oscillator will also be mixed in a bit. The second oscillator will be mixed in half as much, and this one will be mixed in a quarter as much. If we just turn those to 0, we'll now only hear this top one. And for those of you who don't know, the way I just played that is that you can actually use your computer/laptop keyboard as a musical keyboard. So I'm pressing 2 for C sharp, and then E for E. Oh, that actually matches up. And 5 for F sharp. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, so that is a sine wave. What it also has is a triangle wave, a saw wave, a square wave, and a sound I've only ever heard this particular synthesizer use or refer to that I've never heard of anywhere else, called a rounded saw. There's also random, which is essentially white noise. And there's this option over here, which is to import a file. I don't actually know how you save a waveform as a file, but I know you can do it. And if you can save waveforms as a file, you can get any shape on the oscilloscope, which is this thing over here. You've all seen these things before. You probably didn't know they were called oscilloscopes until now, but those things that show sound waves. Yeah. So you can save a shape that a sound can make as like a file. Again, I don't know how, but I know you can do it. And then you could import it into 3xOsc and have one of your oscillators make that shape. If you're wondering what this little thing here does, it inverts the oscillator, which is rarely going to be important, but it could be. If you're wondering what it means by that, is the shape here it's making, the sine wave, as you can see, it first goes up and then it goes down. If I do this, you can't really tell on the oscilloscope over there because the effect is negligible, but you'll just have to trust me because it's going so fast. It's hard to tell which one that it started on, which one it stopped on. But basically, when this is selected, it will go down first, then up, instead of up first, then down. Again, rarely going to be important, but there's a few situations where you need to do that. There's also the phase offset over here. You could probably tell that I was doing something, but probably couldn't put your finger on what. And to be honest, I was wrong about what this did in the past, I think. But what this does, from what I can tell, is essentially when you know how you have sounds come through a left and right ear. Well, there's obviously you can make it so the sound goes more to the left or more to the right, or maybe even completely to the left or completely to the right. And when you do that, it sounds like this. Also, if your audio went silent while you were listening to that, then the reason for that is you might be on some kind of old computer or just sounds coming through some old equipment. For some things that are in mono sound and can't do a left and right ear, I think most of them would convert it so that it plays correctly, but some things will mess up and they'll only play sound coming from the left ear and not play any sound coming from the right ear. So if that just happened to you, that'll be why. Anyway, hopefully though that didn't happen and you could hear it both ways. So yeah, what this does is similar to that kind of thing, but in a way that doesn't mean you just hear it in one and just hear it in another. What it does is, it's very, very, very slightly delays the sound coming through either the left or the right ear by a few milliseconds. I think it's down to that small of a time window of time, and having it like that feels like it's more evenly spread around across both ears. Like when I play it like this, if you were to tell me, quote unquote, where that sound is while wearing headphones, you'd probably just say right in front of you or just like in the middle, basically. Whereas if I do it kind of like this, it's more sounds like it's surrounding you, it's all around you. So yeah, that's kind of the effect you get from that. There is also detune. Is this stereo detune? Stereo detune. So I've never seen, I only just realised now, I don't think I've ever seen another synth that does this, but I'm pretty sure what that's basically doing is doing what I was just talking, but instead of adding a delay, it changes the pitch of one ear and not the other. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Then there's this coarse knob. So what this means is pitch. By default, this is at 24, which I'm pretty sure basically means that whatever note you play is the note that will come out. So I'm playing C sharp on a C sharp 5 on here. What it means by that 5 is that it's how many octaves up it is. FL Studio has a very wide range. It goes all the way from, which is so low pitch you probably can't even hear it, to which is so high pitch you probably barely heard it, and it probably was not pleasant. So yeah, C sharp 5, like the middle frequency is C5. So yeah, this is basically the middle area. So when I press C sharp 5, it'll actually get the note C sharp 5 coming out. But if I change this coarse pitch to go down 1, now I'm getting C even though I'm pressing the note C sharp. And now if I make it go down 12, because there are 12 notes in the scale, I am now getting C sharp 4 instead of C sharp 5, even though I'm pressing the note C sharp 5. And it obviously goes up as well. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I personally thought it was always kind of pointless to add this thing inside the synthesizer where you change the pitch, because it just changes what note you're playing, and if you wanted to change what note you were playing, sure, you would just give it a different note and not... Yeah, but a lot of synthesizers have that. What is a little bit more useful in my opinion is the fine-tuning, which is the same concept. It changes the pitch of the sound you put into it, but it's a bit more useful because this fine-tuning goes in hundredths of a note, which is what a cent tone is, or a cent. So because it goes in such small divisions of a note, it is, well, much more useful. You know, I can't tell it to play the note halfway in between C sharp and D, but I can if I play C sharp while telling it to move change that pitch to half of a note above that by setting it to plus 50 cents, because that's obviously 50 or hundredths of a note, which is the same as a half. So now I'm playing the pitch in between C sharp and D, even though I couldn't play that on a keyboard. And then finally there's just the panning. Is it on the left ear or the right ear? So yeah, that's how a 3x oscillator works. The rest of these are just more of the same thing, and you can just mix them in with this knob. And to demonstrate what I was on about when I said the fine-tuning is actually pretty useful, besides just being able to play notes that don't exist, quote unquote, what can have some very interesting effects, and I'm not going to go... I don't think, it depends if it is convenient to bring up, but I don't think I'm going to go into this really yet in this video, because it's something that I can cover a lot. I'm going to end up covering a lot of other videos, I know. But we're now going to have the same sound. These are both sine waves with all the same settings, only this one is going to have an extra 5 cents added to it. So this is slightly higher pitch, but they're both very similar. What will that sound like? That's a cool effect, and you can change the speed of that effect by making it further away from the correct pitch or closer to it. And it works making it lower pitched as well. Trying to make it -1. Yeah, there we go. Also, a little trick just while I'm at it. Not it's going to be super useful, but you know, if you're ever wanting to get, just for the sake of your OCD, get a knob or something like that on FL Studio to be a strangely specific amount, if you hold Control while you move it around, it should move around less. I think that doesn't work for this one. At least I can't tell if it's working. Not every knob works, but the majority of knobs in FL Studio, if you hold Control while you move them up or down, it will move them up or down more slightly, so you can get more accurate. However, I think that doesn't work for any third-party ones. Like, if you add any synthesizers that weren't inside FL Studio to begin with, I don't think any of them really work with that trick unless they say otherwise, like the people who made it themselves. So yeah, there's also another option here, which I can hardly believe I've only just realised, which is AM Oscillator 3. Sorry, I just had to test that for a second. I'm not gonna lie, I've never used that before, but I know what it is. AM stands for amplitude modulation. So this is something that we're gonna see more when we get into the later synths, but modulation in general, these different types of modulation, is almost always when we take a wave, and technically, obviously, because this is electronic music, until it comes out the speakers, all these different shapes and all that, they aren't sounds yet. All they really are is data. It's just a recorded, like kind of a way of expressing how much an amount is over time. And you might be wondering, why am I bringing this up? This kind of strange, vague, roundabout way of saying like how sound works. Well, it's because the reason why these shapes matter is because we see that in that graph, the middle is no volume, and closer to the top and the bottom is volume. However, we can say that moving up or down represents whatever we want. It doesn't have to be volume. So this is where modulation comes in. Probably the most well-known of modulation form of modulation is FM modulation, or frequency modulation, where we instead make it so we create a wave like we do with these, like we might use a sine wave, but then instead of actually playing that sound wave, making it something that we can hear, and just make it volume, we instead take another wave that already exists and then decide to change that wave's frequency by whatever value the other wave has. So that would mean when that other wave moves up, the frequency of the wave we're modulating would increase, and when it moves down, the frequency of the wave we're modulating would decrease. So yeah, that's how FM works. So AM, you could probably guess, since it's amplitude modulation, will control the volume of another sound by that. Instead of it being the volume of the sound that, well, we're putting out here, we take a sound that already exists and we control the volume of that by this. Which is why this sounds so... having this on or off sounds very similar. If we turn it off, and if we turn it on, it doesn't sound that different, although you can hear a difference. So yeah, I'm not sure if you'll be able to really see, but if I turn this off, and then I also get rid of this, now as I slowly turn this on, you probably... it might have been a bit too hard to see, but as you can see, the tops become less smooth and more sharp to fit with this sharp saw wave kind of shape. So yeah, that's what that's doing. There's also another type of modulation called ring modulation, which I think I'll have to cover, but I'm going to get round to that when I get round to that. But it does have a similar effect to amplitude modulation, but it's less aggressive and just generally tends to sound more pleasant. Anyway, the next one is audio clip. Yeah, there's not much to say here. You take a sound, you drag it in, there you go. There's your audio clip. I suppose you can trim it down, which will get rid of any of the kind of silence after it. You can have it, give it a fade out or a fade in. Change where it starts. This crossfade thing, I must admit, I don't usually use this menu because most of it isn't that, you know, necessary. But the crossfade thing, I believe, is if you wanted to try and loop that sound, it will start to fade in the beginning of the sound as the sound ends. Swap stereo just swaps the ears. Fade stereo, oh. I'm guessing that kind of makes it so that at the start of the sample, the left and right ears are very kind of separated with the whole, you know, different phases on different ears, as I mentioned before, and towards the end they start to converge and come together. I'm guessing what that is. That's what that is. There's then normalization. So that didn't seem to do much here. I think what normalization is all about is it will, if a sound has a very, very wide dynamic range, if it's got very loud bits and very quiet bits, it will kind of all knock them to about the same volume. I think this sound just wasn't affected by it. I think that's what it does, at least. I'm not sure, to be fair. I do know most of this stuff, but like, normalization is one of those things. I think most people use it, but I've never used it. So, yeah. You can obviously reverse it. You can reverse the polarity, which all that means is it goes down when it goes up and up when it goes down. And remove DC offset. So I did not know what that meant for a long time, and I saw it a lot of the time in a lot of FL Studio stuff, and I always just kind of ignored it because it was always one of those things I knew was a very small, kind of finicky thing that wasn't that important. And I finally actually know now. It is essentially, it will look at the sound that you've given it, and if it's kind of biased towards one side, if it's got more up than down or down than up, it will try to balance it out. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with having more up than down or down than up, but it sometimes can sound a bit it sometimes can sound wrong. It depends. If you'll know what I mean if you like try and have a sound that's loads of up and not much down, or the other way around. It'll definitely sound. I think it messes kind of with your audio quality, but it can have an interesting effect that you might actually want on purpose. You can also do it from any file on your computer by clicking that button. And I actually kind of ignored this part, but. Right, so that seems like just a way to stretch the pitch and time and length of the thing without changing the sound itself, hopefully, as much as possible. I think all this stuff is just things for declicking. I think so. Declicking is just that some sounds, depending on how they're done, they can have an annoying little click sound when you first start to play them. And generally, this declicking stuff is just making it so that at the start of a sound, it's not instantly at full volume. There's different ways of doing it so it doesn't sound unnatural and all that. So I think that's just why there's so many different modes. But it's all very, very specific stuff that you'll rarely want to care about. Then there's Autogun. If I could say that one thing in FL Studio was the worst thing in FL Studio, I would probably say Autogun. Which probably seems harsh, because I remember this is one of the first synths I used, because it was so close to, the beginning of the alphabet. It was one of the first ones I clicked on, and I was so confused by this synth. I was like, what is this? How does it work? What is it? And it turns out that it's called Autogun because it is literally just Ogun over here, which we'll get to later. Only, instead of being able to actually control what your sounds are, it just gives you a bunch of pre-made sounds. How many pre-made sounds? Well, let's have a quick look at the manual, shall we? Quick look. Image line, FL Studio. Oh, hey, look, 4,229,967,296. Oh! Most of which have never been heard by human ears. Ugh, and okay, I'm afraid you're just gonna have to take my word for it on this one, because I'm pretty sure they've edited it and gotten rid of it. But I remember reading the manual for this thing a bit ago, and just bursting out in ironic laughter. They made the worst joke here. I can only imagine they removed it both because they're embarrassed about it, and also because I guess it's a little bit sexist or whatever. But basically, instead of most of which have never been heard by human ears, I'm pretty sure it said most of which have never been heard by man or woman. Are there girls here? Quick, get their numbers. Haha. Yeah. As if this didn't need more reasons to be the worst thing coming from FL Studio, but yeah. Let me actually go more into that, because you might hear this and be like, no, it's not that bad. Let's hear another one. So yeah. Here's the thing. I have to kind of... So, not only is this a bunch of presets, not only is this way more presets than you'll ever need. Yeah, I know the amount of them might seem good, but here's the thing. Say I hear something in Autogun that I think sounds good. Right? I use it. And then I come back and I want to use it again. What preset was that again? Oh, let me quickly search through the library of over 4 billion. Yeah, I'll find it eventually. I think they all have like an ID number. I've forgotten how you get it. I think they have an ID number and oh right. Yeah, oh no, it's not an ID, it's just the number of the preset. And I said I think there's some way you can like type it in. And I assume that's how you get like the preset you want, but otherwise you basically just have to keep looking through random presets until you get one you like. And this magic dust knob here, I'm pretty sure the manual doesn't even say what this does, and I have no idea myself. It's just called magic dust. And then there's master level. I'm pretty sure that's just volume. It's just volume. So yeah, that's all this is. Also, a bit of a conspiracy theory. Well, I mean, I say it's a conspiracy theory. It's not really that far-fetched, but the manual doesn't say anything about this, but I'm 99% sure that this is made by an AI, just because I see the names of the creators of these things recur a lot, and the names of the presets and the descriptions of the presets sometimes just make no sense. And I can only assume that the only way they managed to get this many presets is surely they didn't have actual human beings sit down and make over 4 billion presets for a mediocre synth in FL Studio. I can only imagine this is just done by AI, and that's why some of these do not sound like they're English, like sounds not far from a Korg oasis being the description of this sound. Pretty close to Elvis. I didn't think that was close to Elvis, personally. Nice and warm, like that smooth thing Jar was using that's broken. Yeah, again, pretty sure these are done by AI. So yeah, actually, let me quickly just explain why I think this is the worst thing. I think the big thing here is just, why would you use this? You will always get a different sound from this. Even though, and that sounds like an upside, but to be honest, all of the sounds are technically still different. Almost all of them sound very, very, very similar still. They're all the same kind of sound. They're just small differences between each one 4 billion times. So it's like, this has narrow uses. If you get that sound that you really, really wanted, you'll never be able to get it again, and you won't know how you got it or why you got it. You'll just get it. And I personally think that all of the presets here, like, for the most part, sound a bit tacky. There are a few ones that are decent that I've heard, but none of them have been really like, oh yeah, that's amazing. And so yeah, I think it's not really good for people who are new to FL Studio, because yes, it's easy to use, but it's completely uncontrollable, and it's not an easy to use thing that teaches you anything. It just teaches you to keep mashing the button to look for the next preset and hope it's decent. So yeah, I don't think it's good for new people. People who know what they're doing would rather make their own thing if they got a sound in mind, rather than look through a bank of over 4 billion until they find what they want. And probably even then not find what they want. I really don't know who this is made for, except just to show off, hey, look how much you can make with Autogun. And it's like, yeah, technically you could make that stuff with just about any synthesizer with enough parameters. Like, it's not that impressive, really, because, yes, well, it's impressive that you went through the trouble of making 4 billion of them, but then even is that impressive, because it sounds like again, I think it's all done by an AI, because it doesn't seem realistically that they did this manually. Anyway, yeah, so I think Autogun is the worst thing here, just because it fulfills no purpose. Then there's Automation Clip. So, like, I don't know what to say about this one. It is technically good, but, like, I have never gone into add and then automation clip. The way that I've always used automation clips is if I want to alternate moving a knob, which, by the way, I just realised there might be a few people who are very new to FL Studio who don't know how to do this. Let me quickly just... So we'll have this pattern, and I'll put it in here. Now say that I wanted to automate the phase, the stereo detune. Then I could right click this and go and create automation clip. And then all I'd have to do is and now it's automating it. So that's how you usually go about creating automation clips. But what you can technically do is you can create an automation clip there, like by going onto the add thing, get one here, draw it here, but it's not going to do anything yet because you actually have to tell this automation clip to change something. So you would then have to right click the thing you want it to change, go and link to controller, find the automation clip here, and then click accept. Did that even work? Did that just not work? Automation clip, accept. Oh right, now it's done it. And that just seems more difficult. I don't know why you wouldn't just right click and go on create automation clip. So I don't know whether I should say that's terrible or amazing by that logic, because like technically automation clips are amazing. You need them all the time and they're good for all situations, but at the same time I never go and add then automation clip. I always just right click create automation clip because it automatically links it and it automatically places it down and even names it after the knob that I'm changing, so you know, it makes sense. By the way, don't worry about this, we'll get to this when I get to FFPs. So yeah,